Hello, Marshmallow Man and Brews MTG, Mr. Combo here. Welcome everyone out there on the Twitch and YouTube lands. We are super excited to be here. I'm super excited to not be dying. As you know, some of you may have seen in the Discord, I had pneumonia, which I thought that was only something old people get, but that is not the case, and it sucks a lot.
Yeah, that sounds like something you would like. It's like Oregon Trail, you got dysentery or something.
You'd have to take him out back and shoot him. And then he'd have pneumonia and a gunshot wound.
Just old yeller him, just so hard.
I mean, I kind of felt like I was like just waiting for a gunshot wound or a firework to explode. Something needed to happen because it was just, oh man, it was awful. But I'm alive. I'm here. Very very excited. And yeah, we're here to discuss some budget decks. You guys ready?
The best
Should
kind
we
of
just
decks.
go ahead and get this going?
Sure.
Yeah, why not? I mean,
All
we can
right.
do whatever.
We can
I
do
know.
whatever.
This
Ultra
is like
Budgets is just, he can't wait to talk about his build. That's
exactly.
what he said.
Oh my gosh, yes. This is like, here's the thing. Do we need more foreplay? Like when it
Ooh.
comes down to talking about this stuff, you know?
Well, I mean, look, I have heard that women state that men need to do more foreplay. So, I mean, I don't know. Just take that as you will. That's just
on
some
themselves?
advice. Ross is like, yeah, I'm in and out 75 seconds. Come on, guys.
Right. What do you want?
Budget
Working up to
foreplay.
it.
Well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to record in 3, 2, and
That's a
1. All right. Hello, everyone. Mr. Comment number 5 here, doing this a little out of order because I'm still a little loopy on the drugs, but that's all right. Definitely excited to talk here about budget decks. And of course, if you guys want to get at me or the primary channel, at Mr. Comment number 5 on Twitter or at CMDTower.
Good. You're good.
Hey guys, MarketingRoss here. I'm also out of sync. I don't have an excuse. I'm just not on schedule here. But if you'd like to find me, you can find me on Twitter at EDHREC, or you can catch me in the Discord, which all of you should be joining. Can't wait to talk about the best way to use your spare change.
I do have an excuse for why I'm out of sync, and it's because I have a rubber band in my hand, and I can't focus on more than one thing at once, and currently my entirety of my focus is on this rubber band. Hi, I'm Andrew, also known as UltraBudgetBrews, and you can find me on Twitter at BrewsMTG, and I post a couple times a week on there on cards to save you money or ways to save you money playing Magic. So yeah.
Now, I do have a question before we get into this. Are you as wild as the Taliban?
I am a rubber band man, wild as a Taliban.
Bam!
9
You
to my
got
right.
it.
Here's the thing. So some of you guys, I'm sure if you're listening to us, you probably know the EDHREC cast. So Matt Morgan is one of my best friends, and that was one of our favorite songs back in high school. We could rap significant parts of it, and I don't know if you noticed, but I am a white dude from the suburbs, so I don't know. I look back at some of that kind of stuff, and 9 in my right, 45 in my other hand. You know, I don't know.
Just be glad it wasn't all recorded like this is.
Honestly, man. Ooh, the things that. Anyway.
Well, welcome to a new episode of The Budget Shop, where floor to ceiling has no meaning here, and the foiling is always taco shaped. Or, I don't know if you guys saw, I saw some people at their Dominaria United, the foil was just coming straight off the card. That doesn't sound
Really?
good. Yep,
I
just straight was peeling off like a sticker. But today, we are going to be focused around not a color set like we've traditionally done in the past, because we found kind of hard to do when you're restricted to a color. So we are focused on flying tribal. And before we get in here, just remember, guys, go to abyssproxyshop.com. Use code CMDTower if you're looking for any high-end cards for your budget deck, but you don't want to spend real money on it. Like, very much, like, just because I'm selling cards, Gaia's Cradle, Tundras, Scrublands, Plateaus, Savannah. I'm holding a mortgage payment in my hand I should probably go to a best proxy shop instead of just having these without sleeves on my desk.
Are you going to replace all of that, all of the things you're getting ready to sell from the
The
proxy shop?
deck, no. I think I'm just,
Oh,
I wanted to do the God Tribal as a meme. I did it. I've won multiple times with it. I think it did its
okay.
purpose, and I just don't need a. For the people that aren't in our Facebook group, TCG Market Mid had this at $11,500 for a 100 card deck, which is just ridiculous.
Woof. What a meme.
So
Yeah,
funny we're talking about that when we're talking about budget cards.
I know.
How many decks would $11,000 buy you, Ross?
I would say at least 11.
Ah, that's good. I like that. Yes, that is probably true.
What about you?
Now the question is, Andrew, would that build you
12.
100 decks?
He won up me.
Possibly. I had to one up him. He said 11. I said 12.
Yeah.
It's fine.
No, I mean, if we're being honest though, like we've talked about this before, but you kind of throw in those cards that are just laying around in your collection, and then you punch it all in, and you're like, holy cow, this deck is $300. And I know
Yeah.
that's nothing compared to the 1100 we just said, but
No, that's
Still
very true. I mean,
shocking.
honestly, when we did this deck, and we're getting super off tangent, but it's interesting. When we did this deck on Brews and Builds a year and a half, 2 years ago, I think it came in at about 5 or 6 grand. So I think it is kind of interesting how it's almost doubled in price over the last 18 months, 2 years.
Thanks, Obama.
But Brews, Ultra Budget Brews, or Oob, talk to us about what flying tribal looks like to you holistically when someone is trying to build a deck but scraping pennies stuck underneath that park bench.
Yeah, so flying tribal is it's interesting. You because the reality it's just typically a creature beatdown deck. I mean, I'm sure there are combos you can do with creatures that just happen to have flying, but I can't think of any combos off the top of my head that specifically involve like it mattering if your creatures are flying. So you're just gonna beat your opponents into paste with flying critters. I think there are a couple different ways you can do this. It's whether you want to focus on doing like an Alfred Hitchcock The Birds impression and have a bunch of little 1/1s and 2/1s or whatever peck your friend's eyes out, or are you gonna like do a bunch of giant sphinxes and dragons and angels and all those sort of things and just have a few hits, just but more expensive. So yeah, I think it's just like I think it's often going to be more of a tempo-y, just tempo-y beatdown deck.
So that's interesting. I actually kind of thought of it a couple different ways. Now, granted, when we get to the later segments, the cards I'm talking about have nothing to do with what I'm talking about now. But what I kind of looked at with Flying Tribal was almost how can I ensure that I'm the only one flying? Like, I think that's kind of the angle that my brain would go to where no matter what my opponents are doing, even if they are flying, it doesn't matter. So I started thinking of cards like Sandward Convergence. You can get that card for 20 cents. Creatures with flying can't attack you. Think of cards like Archetype of Imagination. You can get that card for $1. You get flying, and all of your opponents lose flying. So, and then of course there is the Grail Daddy. We were talking precast like Moat, but there is Magus of the Moat, way more budget friendly. So that's almost kind of where I went, to where I do think you're right. I think it is more tempo based, and you're going to probably have more what I would describe as fluffy flyers. They're like 4 to 6 CMC, probably anywhere from 3 power to 7 power, and you're just going to be kind of like just hitting people. But you'll want to make sure you can always get through. And I think if you want to go with flying tribal, having some way to almost take away the flying matters from your opponents kind of actually helps in that strategy.
Yeah, and when you're talking about moat, a creature we talked about Magus of the Moat, but another creature that does a pretty good impression is Stormtide Leviathan, and it's 17 cents. It tacks on the island walk feature, but it also makes all your opponents lands islands. So flying or island walk, you're getting in for damage. But I would agree with you on the the tactic of trying to make sure you're the only one flying, but I would also say in the realm of tempo, a lot of flying decks live in that white blue realm, and so they're probably trying to out control their opponents while also pecking in damage in between those control spells.
I'd agree. Yeah, and that's something. If you've played any amount of limited, or even like standard or modern, any other constructed formats that aren't multiplayer Commander, you have probably been on the receiving end of something like a Delver of Secrets or the 2/2 token that Swansong makes. In EDH, that crap don't matter. In other formats, it's it's really important. And it's like all you have to do is control the board with counter spells and bounce spells, and and then just beat somebody to death with a 2/2, and that is a viable way of winning. EDH less so, but still can do it, I guess, if that's what you really want to do. I mean,
If you try hard enough, anything's possible.
man, if somebody's gonna try to kill me like that, though, they're gonna kill me in a different way, and I'm just gonna be like, yeah, I'm out, man. Like, you got me. I'm clearly not resolving any spells. I'm gonna go
Congrats.
find another table. Like, you did it, buddy.
So one of the things that I find interesting is, you know, when I was kind of like trying to do the research for this, I don't think I ever just see flying tribal. It's always like dragons, angels. So like, Marketing Ross, how do you kind of look at it? I mean, do you think that there is ways, and maybe we'll talk about them here in a little bit, where you can just have, hey, if they're flyers and they don't really care about the creature types, or do you think there's always like some other sub theme that's always tied to flying, just because it's like, well, hell, I'm in Azorius, I guess it's a lot of angels, or well, I guess I'm in Rakdos or Jund, I guess I'm gonna have a lot of dragons. I mean, do you think there's always a subtype that comes along with it, or can you just have flying tribal?
So yeah, I think a lot of times you will find that you are building a tribe that happens to have flying, but there is a archetype of flying matters, and it typically lives in that Azorius realm. And you have things like that do kind of cute things like Siani, who you get to scry when you attack with you scry the number of attacking flyers, or the Jin, I think it is, that you start swapping permanents with people if you contact with 3 flyers. So there are a few. Oh, can't forget before we move on, the OG Kanji, uh, famous bird flyer. He
Super
very
famous.
much cares whether things are flying or not. No, he is. Don't just look him up. He's like 30 cents. Um, but they have. I mean, he got a new printing, and still he doesn't care what the tribe is. He just cares that they're flying. Pumps them on the power on the attack, and then pumps them on the defense on the block. So you can do flying tribal, but I mean there are those memes floating around of like, oh, my first deck, I'm going to make a flying tribal deck. And I think it's because if you just go flying tribal, it may not work out that well, especially in EDH, because a lot of the flying tribal stuff is so small and it takes such an accumulation of attacks versus, Dragon.
My one experience of the Kanji deck against the Kanji deck. This is not about flying tribal. Kind of is, but not. We I was at it was the KC Magic Fest, and I had somebody sit down. We sat down with a group of people. I hadn't met any of them before, and we all had that pregame conversation. And it was like, "Hey, what do we want to play?" And this dude says, "Man, I'm gonna play Kanji Bird Tribal." And so we're all like, "You know what? We're gonna play some lower powered stuff. Like, let's just be real. It's gonna be a little lower powered. Especially if you're just sticking to birds, like, gonna be a little lower powered." So we all got our like, you know, low powered stuff out, and he flips his thing over, and his first turn is like mana crypt, mana vault, static orb, and he goes, "Aha! Surprise stacks!" And we just all 3 of us just like slowly turned and looked at him, and we're like, "Cool, man. That was fun. I love that." And so we played
That
it
was
out until like turn 5, and we all just conceded. And he like clearly could tell we were all pretty frustrated, and he apologized and got something out. We ended up having some fine games with him, but it was just like, I was like, man, come on, dude, you can't do that. Anyways, that's my Kanji story.
It was a very successful Rule Zero conversation.
Rule
I mean, he
zero.
didn't lie. He probably played bird tribal.
Right?
know,
The
Had a
bird's
single
probably
bird.
untapped. Yeah.
I need to put rule 0, and so if like on my knuckles, so if like
Oh my
rule 0
gosh.
this, and just like get somebody, get them.
Just get him.
Yeah.
Well, before we move on to the next section where you guys get to hear about some of the legends that we each think could be built around Flying Tribal, we would love for you guys to check out our Patreon, patreon.com/CMDTower. We did update our tiers just with, the way that costs are increasing. And, to be honest, we've tried to invest a lot more into the channel in 2022, whether that getting like sound rights, you guys see us here on Twitch and YouTube, getting new gear, making sure that a lot of our guests have the proper gear to be able to use as well. Anything you guys could do on there, for just as little as $3, it really does go a long, long way for us. But we do have tiers on up from there. Plus, we are doing a deal if you join our Patreon between now and Thanksgiving. We are giving you guys a special 20% off coupon to our Etsy store, which we'll talk about later. But just a little thank you, for the community. So anything you guys could do with our Patreon, we'd appreciate it. Patreon.com/CMDTower. Well, since we're focused on an archetype, we need the legend to helm such deck. MarketingRoss, what legendary spoke to you for helming a flying tribal deck?
Right. So as I was talking about before, like you can go straight flying tribal, but I liked the idea of having some sort of sub theme to work in there and work another angle. So I worked in a life gain tribal, and I went with Treva the Renewer, which is 3 colorless and Bant green, white, blue. And it is a 6/6 legendary flying dragon. When Treva the Renewer deals combat damage to a player, you may pay 2 colorless and a white. If you do, choose a color, and then you gain 1 life for each permanent of that color. And so, thinking about flying tribal in the realm of generating tokens, a lot of those tokens do tend to be white in the Bant color pie. And so, my idea was that I would focus mostly on white permanents and white tokens. And then, when I connect with Treva, obviously I would choose white, and hopefully, boom, life gain.
That's awesome. I've never seen a Treva deck. That would be
I
sounds kind of
didn't
rad.
know Treva existed. Just so you know, there is a Pro Tour promo for $31.50 if you didn't want to, spend the 86 cents to get the just normal copy.
I did not know that, and I probably will not be buying that. That is pretty sick, though, actually.
Oh no, it looks super cool. So is your kind of strategy here to get a lot of flying tokens and then just use things like Psy Master Thopter or things like that to try to get your army? Like how are you building out that token army, especially because like Anointed Procession's kind of off the table, Doubling Season's off the table. That stuff's just way too expensive.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, if it wasn't budget, those would be great inclusions to double up on the tokens that I'm making. But I think Oob is going to get into it a little bit with his build for the different color of tokens that we can build. But a lot of times in the cards that I was looking at, the tokens that are being produced are flying white tokens, whether they're spirits or birds. Um, so my idea was that it is kind of a go wide strategy with some of the spells producing larger amounts of tokens in that white color wedge, and then choosing white when I connect with Treva.
That's awesome.
That's super
Yeah, I
cool.
like it.
Yeah. And then like I would assume like your late game payoff cards, like I don't know how expensive the card actually is. I don't know if Aetherflux Reservoir is out of budget realm. I can't imagine that's crazy expensive. But is that kind of like your payoff? Like, are you trying to gain an insurmountable battle of a lot of life and like bolt someone, or how are you using that life gain?
Sure. So Aetherflux is $16. So if this was a budget deck, that would
Never
be a
mind.
considerable chunk of it. But no, so my thinking in this, and Oob, you can chime in here if you agree or disagree. But within budget decks, a lot of times it is combat damage that you're getting through with, and so there will be some payoff cards that I talk about with the life gain, but more than anything, it's just mitigating the attacks that I'm receiving and trying to be annoying on the side of my defense.
Definitely. And yeah, there are some like budget-ish payoffs for life gain. Like, you're a Johnny's Pridemates and your stuff that like, yeah, especially
Maybe
things
like
that like
Helix
increase
Pinnacle.
Helix Pinnacle. That I don't think it has to do with life gain, does it? That's just like
That
Is
one's
that
just
just a
a
mana sink? Oh, okay.
dump mana into it, and if you have 100
That's
tower
right.
counters or whatever it is, you win.
Trelsara,
Yeah.
Moon Sage, like
Scry
stuff like
and build.
that. Yeah, like you can, life gain can grow stuff real big if you ever want to. So it's a good budget deck. Yeah, I love it.
Cool.
Thanks.
Well, the one that I went with, I went ahead and did mono black, which you would think it'd be very limiting for a flying tribal deck, but I actually think there's a lot of legs here. So we're talking Henrika, Demanthi, Demanthi,
Domnafi.
not gonna work here. Boom. Old jokes from old cult classics. We're talking two colorless black black. You can get this gal for a little under $1. Legendary creature vampire, because you know vampires need more help. It's probably one of the most underserved tribes in all of Magic. Next to
Awesome.
slivers, slivers need help like nobody's business.
Like, whoa.
And on its body, it does have flying. And at the beginning of combat on your turn, choose one that has not been chosen. Each player sacks a creature. You draw a card, lose a life, or transform Henrika into Henrika Infernal Seer. And this is kind of where the flying part kind of comes into it. So she has flying, death touch, and lifelink. Colorless black black. Each creature you control with flying, death touch, and or lifelink gets +1/+0 until end of turn. And it's a 3/4. So here is kind of like some of the notes that I made on Henrika and why I think it makes a lot of sense for a budget deck. You got removal built on a body, you got card draw built on a body, and you got transform built on a body. All of those effects, you don't have to connect or you don't have to connect for damage. It's not at beginning of upkeep. As long as you do this in your first main phase, you're automatically getting one. And I feel like if you're in a budget deck, and especially in the few budget decks that I've played, if you can get immediate value, especially when playing your commander, that just makes it infinitely better. So I thought that was interesting. But then, kind of going into it further, the flying tribal piece with the +1/+0 and the 3 mana, it's not target creature, it's each creature, and it's a mana dump. And I think we can all agree, mono black, whether you're on a budget or not, can produce large amounts of mana pretty darn easy. Because a lot of it's paying life, maybe it's Phyrexian, who really knows? And so I could see that 3 mana being a really good mana dump. Like, okay, played my commander, I'm just going to transform it right now, beginning of combat. I got 12 extra mana, boom, my creatures get +4/+0. But here's where I started seeing it being real interesting. There's 586 cards that are legal in a mono black commander and commander with flying on the card. Of that 586, 491 are under $1. 318 are 4 CMC or less of those 491 that are under $1. And then of that 318 that are 4 CMC and less, 249 of them are creatures. So that just tells me if we got 250 creatures that are 4 CMC or less with flying under $1, that gives us a great foundation to really build a diverse flying tribal deck. Obviously, you guys all know why I went under $1. It's budget. I think we can all figure out why I went creatures. You need stuff with flying. It doesn't do you any good if you have a bunch of equipment that have flying. You need creatures to put that on. But the 4 CMC one is the one I wanted to highlight because as I was doing a lot of the research, and I mean, when we get to the penny, nickel, dime, quarter, it won't really vibe with what I'm saying here. But the one thing I've seen in budget is a lot of times your curve is higher because you can't get the most optimal cards because they're cheaper. And there's a reason they're cheaper, they're a little slower. And so being able to stay under 4 CMC, I thought was really imperative for this deck to be able to function. So that way you have stuff to play. Because I've played budget decks before where your curve might be a little higher and nothing feels worse than land pass, and doing that for the next 3 to 4 turns before you can do something 5 or 6 CMC. So what do you guys think of Henrika and kind of like the few different points that I made? We could start with Oob.
Yeah, I thought Henrika was kind of a cool choice. I totally forgot about her backside, to be honest. Because I always think of Henrika as just kind of I don't want to say a bad rankle, but
Yeah,
kind
no,
of
I
a
could see
bad
that.
rankle.
It kind of is like a bad rankle.
Like Rankle, I love Rankle. I have a very big soft spot in my heart for Rankle. I used to have a Rankle deck. But it's just kind of what it struck me as. But this is a kind of a cool direction if you are able to, really take advantage of that activated ability. That it can, especially if you go wide enough, that's a lot of damage. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I really like it, and I also just wanted to point out on the reverse on the Infernal Seer that is some very metal flavor text where she's talking about drinking demon blood and never settling for human again.
That is actually pretty rad.
Man, with that kind of
But
flavor text, it should have been like whenever an opponent sacrifices a demon, transform Henrika.
right? No, I mean I really like this, and I think people do forget about flyers in black. There are some pretty significant ones, and they're not all as expensive as R.I.P. Grizzlebrand or anything like that. But um, the other thing that I was thinking about, who's the legend that Murphys has? It's the mono black life gain cr- commander.
Oh, what one is that? It's not Toshiro. Um,
But while you're thinking of that,
think-
essentially at the end of the turn, you get to create a XX flying demon, which is X is the amount of life that you've gained.
oh,
So I think,
Tavash, I think.
yeah, yeah. So I
Gloom
think with this
Summoner.
build, Sean, if or Mr. Combo, excuse me, if you had enough life gain built into it, accidental or not, that could be a good inclusion as well because he just produces flyers on his own that then get pumped by Henrika.
Oh, there you go. And I mean, technically, Henrika's backside does also count the lifelink creatures. So you could do a blend where, okay, if we're going to have 35 creatures in the deck, let's make sure 20 of them have flying. And then maybe it's a blend of like 8 or 9 with lifelink. Maybe the balance is death touch. So then that way, you can widen your pool a little bit in the
Hmm.
deck. And I mean, mono black also a lot of stuff does share abilities. There's a lot of flying death touch or death touch
Right.
lifelink out there. So yeah, I mean the lifelink could actually be one. And I did see a lot of life gain payoff cards with flying as I was going through, but I was like, man, I don't think I'm gonna have a ton of lifelink, but I genuinely forgot about Toshiro there. So that could be a very good, almost like secondary option or backup
Hmm.
commander. Like, hey, you got rid of Henrika a bunch of times. Well, this guy now with all my life gain, we're gonna be producing these flyers.
Right. And Black loves to pay life as a resource, so I think it would be a pretty sweet sub theme in there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for
be
sure.
rad.
All right, Marketing Ross, bring us home. What was the legend that really spoke with you?
Hi, I'm MarketingRoss, and the person that has not gone yet.
Oh shit,
And I, hey,
drugs.
dude, it's you're sick. It's fine. We totally get it. So I went with a little bit of a boring choice, to be honest. So I was gonna go in As. And As is actually a deck I have sitting on my deck next to me, being dissembled, because I don't know, people hate getting their stuff stolen, and I play with new people just enough that it's kind of a turnoff. So it's like, yeah, I feel like I can never play this, so I'm just taking it apart. It was a cool deck though. So decided not to go with that. I decided to go with Alela, Layla. I don't know how to pronounce it. Artful Provocateur. It's a 1 in an Esper, white, blue, black, legendary creature, fairy warlock, which that's kind of cool, actually. I didn't know she was a warlock, but flying, death touch, lifelink. Um, Other creatures you control with flying get +1/+0, and then whenever you cast an enchantment or artifact or enchantment spell, you create a 1/1 blue fairy creature token with flying. So she does just a little bit of everything. She's very popular for a reason. And so, how I would probably build her, I would probably want to try to do something a little off offbeat. I'd probably try to do something like sagas, like Saga Tribal or something in Esper. I think that would be pretty cool.
That would be pretty fun.
You could also do something like throw a bunch of clockwork and arc bound creatures in here and that kind of thing. But I would probably just if you're building it for flying tribal, you definitely can very, very easily. I would probably end up leaning a little more towards artifacts, because there are some cool artifact creatures, artifact payoffs in these colors that really synergize well with flying. So, yeah, I think it's a very powerful deck. It's kind of is going to have a target on its head a lot of the times, probably. Honestly, if you sit down at a table with an Alela deck, if the players that you are playing with have been around the block a few times, they are going to be like, I've seen this before. It killed
Yep.
me really, really hard. So that's a little different than what I might normally do, but it's a cool commander. I mean, it just is. So
Yeah,
that's what I'd go with.
for sure. So one of our friends of the play group, Nance, has a Alayla deck, and his biggest problem is that Alayla gets removed every time she comes out.
Yep.
Which you said she has a huge target on her head. And I don't know if it's Alela or Alayla, but I just imagine Eric Clapton singing her name.
Oh, making the guitar gently weep.
So I guess the question I would have, because you did mention you might go a little bit more towards the artifact, even though Saga Tribal would be fun. So would you kind of go Cheerio-esque? Like, because you know Layla's going to get removed, let me just get as many low-cost artifacts, because really, I'm not even playing the artifact for the artifact. I'm just playing it for the 1/1 flyer.
I think that a Cheerios style deck is really difficult to build on a budget, to build effectively, honestly. So on a budget, definitely probably not, just because a lot of those 0-drop artifacts are pricier than you'd think. And you need to have the card draw that goes along with it, and that is all way price. That stuff's actually where it gets really pricey. And so I wouldn't on a budget. Also, if I wasn't going on a budget, I also wouldn't build it because I want the table to want me to play Magic with them after I'm done playing with the deck. And nothing says I would like to have all of the fun pizza. You cannot have a slice. Quite like watching a Cheerios player do the
Well,
thing.
I
Apologies to
hate
the Cheerios players.
I hate to burst your bubble, Oob. 230 cards, mana value 1 or less, under 50 cents in Esper that are available.
What do you draw on cards off with it though?
Oh no, who cares? You're talking to the guy that doesn't play card draw. Come on, what are you doing here? What is card draw?
Here's the thing, man. If you want to play Alela and then you just play a bunch of like bad shields for 0, make like 4 fairies, and then next turn somebody goes, "Hey, I'm gonna drop a Wrath of God," and you're like, "Cool, I have nothing." Man, more power to you.
But hey, for 20
you
cents,
you, brother.
you can throw SRAM in the deck. 20 cents, you
What?
throw SRAM in the deck. There you go. There's your card draw.
Thran.
SRAM.
Oh, SRAM. SRAM's really only 20 cents?
Yeah, he's
guess
been reprinted into the dirt. Yeah.
Okay, he's not Pure Steel, which is like $1 million dang dollars.
I think Pure Steel went down because it was in that Gala deck.
Oh, really? That's good.
It's still $6. It's still $6. But no, I think Alayla's pretty sweet. Combo, I don't know if you've played against Duff's version of it, but he went heavy into the Anthem and that type of effect and the Cathar's Crusade and just the beating of enchantments when you start making all these fairies. And Alayla she's a strong gal.
She is very strong.
Yeah, part of me wishes that it was like on enters the battlefield instead of on cast. But man, sometimes that on cast is actually kind of nice. It's like, oh, you countered my spell. Well, at least I'm still getting a fairy out of it. So
right.
Yeah, and I would actually argue the enter the battlefield, you would then have to put non-token on there as well. Because, I mean, Michael Synth Lattice, you go infinite. So that would just feel really bad.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. All right. Well, before we go over to our last section, everyone, we would love for you guys to check out our Etsy store. If you just go to Etsy.com, type in CMDTower, you're going to see our great store on there. Sorry, that is the pneumonia and me coughing up what could be swine flu. And big thank you to Lemony Lennings and Spence. Made a couple of the first purchases on there. I actually hooked them up with a limited edition CMDTower proxy card of Command Tower. Myself, SD Sharpie, and Big Tuck will be handing these out at Magic Fest Vegas 30. And, you know, the first couple people making purchases on the store we wanted to hook them up with. So thank you so much. And remember, if you join our Patreon that we mentioned earlier, you'll get a 20% coupon code that you can use from now through the Thanksgiving holiday, whether that be for one of our great sweaters, it could be for a foil playmat. You know, we got a lot of stuff on there. Just everything you do really does help the channel out. So just remember Etsy.com and type in CMDTower. Now we're going to see what each of us came up with for our flying archetype, and we're going to be going with the penny, the nickel, the dime, the quarter. Yes, for you Midwest people, Good Sense is the best sub restaurant. Um, all right. So I went a little haywire here, pun intended, because we are in the middle of watching Prison Break. Great show, by the way. At least the first few seasons. The later seasons, not so much. But for a penny, I think you need ways in flying tribal to be able to get the beats. You need to make sure that your beats can get through. So I thought it could be kind of cool as like this sacrifice sub theme and beats. I thought Gormand would be a great addition to my mono black flying deck. Four colorless black from M21. It's a creature demon. It's a 5/5, and it's an uncommon for a penny. As an additional cost to cast the spell, sack a creature, flying, trample, and when Gormand enters the battlefield, each opponent sacrifices a creature. So our commanders giving us the option to make everyone sacrifice. Gormand's coming in, making everyone sacrifice. What does Mono Black also like to do? A little bit of graveyard recursion, and then that avoids the additional cost to cast effect that penalizes us. Now we just got a Fleshback Marauder coming in, only opponents having to sacrifice. I think that's a really powerful effect, especially on a budget.
Absolutely, and it's
That is a
staple to
cool
a
one.
5/5 Flampler. So, I mean, yeah,
Flamp.
reanimating it is the way to go.
And then the only
Oh,
other
you fl-
card I had for a penny was Biblioplex Assistant. I thought that would be kind of cute. It's a 4-drop flying 2/1, but when it ETBs, you get to put one target instant or sorcery from your graveyard on top of the library. Budget, you need ways to be able to reuse your spells as much as you can, and that's very difficult to do on a budget. So Biblioplex Assistant at least gives you the flying, it gives you the synergy, but hey, it's probably just here to ETB and get the best removal card in all of Magic, Murder, back to your library. All right. So
exactly.
for the
That's fair.
for the nickel, I had a very common card you see a lot, Baelish Shrewd Spy. You can get this guy for about 4 cents. 3 colorless black. It's a vampire rogue. It's a 2/3 flyer. But when it ETBs, target player reveal cards from the top of their library until they reveal a land card, and then puts those cards into the graveyard. I thought this would be a great way in budget. Either A, I can interact with my opponents, but we're in mono black. Maybe we're targeting ourselves. It doesn't say opponent. Maybe I'm going to mill the library until we get a land card. And then we're going to use some other cards I'm going to talk about to be able to recur. Maybe we use that Biblioplex Assistant to be able to dig through. Okay, we dug through 9 cards before we got to a land. Oh, cool. The 4th card was the board wipe I needed. Let's go ahead and get that back with Biblioplex. Just kind of a way to smooth out exactly what our game is doing.
Like that. Sounds like a pretty good. That was one I had thought about. So
Okay,
glad that
okay.
you put it on here.
Yeah.
And then the
I always think that the self mill strategy is a good complement, especially when you're running black. And even in a budget, we talked about it last time, but there's some really strong reanimator spells. You have to pay a few more CMC for it, but I mean, they still work.
Yeah, and then the other one I thought, and I'll do this one real quick. Feaster of Fools, 4 colorless black creature demon. It's a 3/3, but it has Convoke, so our creatures can help it. You can tap them. It pays for a colorless or a mana of the creature's color. It has flying, but it has Devour 2. So when it ETBs, sacrifice any number of creatures, and it gets double that many counters on it. I feel like mono black budget, we're gonna be creating tokens. They could be rats, they could be zombies. Just there's a lot of things in it could be thralls, a lot of things in black that just incidentally make you tokens. And so I think being able to sacrifice these creatures, and our commander's gonna make us sacrifice creatures. We've already talked about another card that's gonna make us sacrifice. We're gonna have to have some just bodies to throw in the graveyard. And I think Feaster of Fools is a cool payoff card where maybe you have 5 or 6 of them, and now you convert those 5 or 6 1/1s into a 13/13 or a 15/15.
Yeah, I
Pretty
like
good.
the idea of
Yeah.
using the convoke and then also using those same creatures for the devour. So you tapped them down and they would be useless, but now the feaster just feasts on them. Also, pointing out this is from your favorite set, Modern Horizons 1.
Oh, well, of course. I hate that we have to say Modern Horizons 1
Modern
now. Like,
Horizons 1 is pretty sweet.
we've come out with multiple. They should have just left my baby alone. It was perfect. It's like The Godfather. Don't need another one.
Well, I mean, the set marker down in the corner is MH1, so they were clearly planning to make a bunch of them.
I know. Jerks. All right. For my dime, I got one card, and I think it's a staple for mono black budget, period. And I actually do want Oob's thoughts on this. I played this quite a bit in Standard when it was in Standard. Gravewalker. Or Grave Waker, I apologize. I always want to say Walker because it makes more sense. Grave Waker. 4 colorless black, creature,
Gotcha.
bird, spirit, flying 5/5 for 9 cents. But it has an activated ability of 5 black. Return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. You can do that anytime you want. It is expensive, but it allows you to grab any creature from your graveyard and put it to the battlefield at instant speed, tapped. What do you think of that as a budget card, as being able
Yeah,
to
if-
reuse our important creatures?
Yeah, as a budget option, I mean, pretty extreme budget, obviously. Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, 5/5 for 5/5 flyer, nothing to sneeze at. It's 5/5 flyer, right? I'm trying
Yep.
to pull it up, and my internet is not. It's like streaming apparently is the the final frontier of what it is willing to do. So, and then yeah, the ability you're probably not going to use on it super often. But having that option is not a bad thing, especially if you have stuff like Gormand, or you have stuff like, any other like big demons, or, I guess mono black big vampires. There's some cool high CMC vampires. Yeah, it's card advantage, and that's great. So I like it.
Cool. All right. My last one. It's a quarter. It's actually only 12 cents, and I think you guys are going to be shocked that it's this cheap. But it's because it got reprinted twice on the last 2 Commander sets. Puppeteer Clique,
Ooh, baby.
I think, makes a lot of sense in here.
Really?
3 colorless, black, fairy wizard, 3/2, flying. I forgot it had flying, to be honest.
Yeah.
When it ETBs, put target creature card from an opponent's graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. It gains haste, and at the beginning of your next end step, exile it. And it does have persist. So when Puppeteer Clique dies, if it had no negative counters on it, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control with a negative counter on it, therefore allowing you to steal something. So hey, our commander wants us to all of us sacrifice a creature. I'll sacrifice Puppeteer Clique. It'll go, it'll come back, and now I'm stealing something else that maybe you guys had to sacrifice. So I think this is it's a powerful card. It's a combo card in non-budget decks. But I think the fact that we can now get this card for 12 cents, it just does so much generic utility in a budget deck.
Yeah, and I love comboing this with hard casting Gormand too. So it's already out. You sack it to the extra cost of casting Gormand, and then Puppeteer Clique has persist. So it comes back, and you grab whatever they sacked. It seems good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I Click. Oh, this was a card I used to see all over the place back in the day. Like, it was just like one of those premier Commander EDH cards, and it's sort of fallen out of favor, I think, to some extent. It's not as efficient as people want to be. It costs 5 mana, and people are like, if I'm not winning the game at 5 and 6 mana, then what am I doing? So, I Click makes me happy. I love Alyssa with Click. So yeah, that's perfect.
Awesome. Well, MarketingRoss, you had a little bit of life gain. What does your penny, nickel, diamond, quarter look like?
Yeah. So starting at the penny, just as a reminder, my hope is to go kind of wide with these flying tokens. So my penny, which is one of the most amusing artworks I'm going to talk about, is Avon Gagglemaster, which is a 4/3 bird warrior for 3 colorless white. It has flying, and it says when Avon Gagglemaster enters the battlefield, you gain 2 life for each creature you control with flying.
Yep.
Huh.
Also another one I almost added. It works a lot better in your deck.
And it's a gaggle. Gaggle.
It's a gaggle of fun. Look at this goose.
It's almost on the loose.
Well,
Peace was
so
never an option.
not a lot to say there, but just right, just going wide and then casting this goose and adding to the life gain that I'm hopefully already doing.
Hmm.
So, moving on to the nickel. From Innistrad, I went with Whispering Wizard, which is 5 cents on the nose. It is 3 colorless and a blue for a human wizard. He's a 3/2, and it says whenever you cast a non-creature spell, create a 1/1 white spirit token with flying. This ability only triggers once per turn. So my hope is that all of the rampant growths and cultivates and counter spells and that sort of thing that I'm going to be probably casting anyway will also turn into a body that I can use later.
Yeah, and I would also imagine that
Yeah,
you're
first.
also going to be running mana rocks. Those are non-creature spells. That's going to count. I mean, you're going to have a lot of stuff. I mean, hey, at least they gave these spirits flying. I never understand it when it's like, yeah, create a 1/1 spirit, and that's it. Like, what? Ghosts can't fly? Get out of here.
He's a sad ghost.
Right. At least they float, and if you can float, you can fly. Floating is
Yeah,
flying out
there you go, wizards. Take note. Listen to our cast. New mechanic, floating.
It's like flying, but less good. The flyer always has flyer has death touch when they block because
Oh
they
my
have the higher
gosh.
ground.
Now we have tears. Where does reach fall into this?
But you can't reach a ghost. Come on, get out of here.
You reached above it and you get him under the armpit. It's great.
Maybe floating can just be the new banding. Just such a terrible mechanic. They print it and then immediately never print it again.
Nobody
Right.
wants to do that much math. All right, moving on to the dime. From the original Shadows over Innistrad, I went with a sorcery called Not Forgotten. It is 1 colorless and a white. And my reasoning for putting this in, it is at sorcery speed, but it's a little bit of flexibility here. So I can either use it as a bit of graveyard hate, or I can use it as a bit of recursion. So what it does when I cast it is put target card from a graveyard on top or bottom of its owner's library. Put a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying onto the battlefield.
Yeah. I mean,
From
so
target.
I
So you
I
put
don't
from a graveyard, you said?
Yeah, from a
Mhm.
graveyard, not just mine. So if you're,
Okay.
throwing Gormand in the graveyard, I could say, nope, put that on the bottom. Also, I'm going to make a spirit.
Yeah, and I guess like especially for myself, and just to remind our listeners and viewers, the immediate thought to me is like, well, that doesn't work. It doesn't work as graveyard hate. It's sorcery speed. Like I'm gonna be doing stuff on my turn when I put it to the graveyard, and I'm then gonna use it for value. But I think we all have to just remember we're talking budget decks, and budget decks don't really do the instant speed thing that well. So if you're at a table with other budget players, everyone's gonna be playing at the same speed. So even though you think Not Forgotten is a slow card and quote unquote unplayable, at a budget table, it's very playable and it's very interactive and it very well could just screw over someone's strategy. So I really like it, and I like that you do get the benefit of the flyer with it.
Definitely.
Gold
Yeah,
star.
it's budget graveyard hate, but budget graveyard hate is better than no graveyard hate. It's more of a preemptive strike as opposed to the surgical, like, oh, somebody goes to reanimate something and you get them. Like, oh, I target this card, and you're like, no, you don't. You don't get to do that, but you get to stop them from doing that to begin with, which maybe is better because the hope leaves their eyes sooner, and that's good.
That got really dark on a budget.
That's real
It
dark.
did. Yes. Hello.
Well, Oog's been
darkness,
doing this for a
my
while, so he
friend.
knows how to create darkness on a dime.
It's impossible.
All right, moving on to the quarter. I have 2 here. One of them I want to talk to you about how I'm going to close out the game, and then the other one's a little bonus that I think is a lot of
Ooh.
value. So for my first quarter at 20 cents is Nykthos Paragon, and that's from Modern Horizons 2, Mr. Combo. That is 4 colorless white for an enchantment creature human soldier. And it says, whenever you gain life, you may put that many +1/+1 counters on each creature you control. Do this once per turn.
Whew.
Well, I was more scared of it until it said do this only once each turn. Now
Yeah.
it seems very fair. 6 mana. I mean, I get it. It was printed in Modern Horizons 2, so it's clearly not as good is if they would have printed it in Modern Horizons 1, Modern Horizons 1, it would have been, you could do that as much as you want. But so are you going to try to have ways in your budget build to be able to gain life on other people's turns as well? Like, is Soul Warden and stuff like that in the budget?
So I don't remember what the price of that one is, but there are similar cards like Streets of New Capenna just had one with the that artist that did Faithless Looting that everybody loves. But it essentially does the same thing when a creature enters the battlefield, gain 1 life. So there's potential for it. But in this particular build, I am going to clap for a lot of life gain once on my turn, each turn. That's the goal anyway. And so let's just, for funsies, say I have 5 white permanents and I hit with Treva. Then I'm going to put 5 counters on all of my creatures, and then next
Yeah,
turn,
that's
all of
true.
those 1/1 birds are going to be real, real scary.
That's hot. I love that so much.
That's hot.
That's hot.
Honestly,
Yeah,
this
no,
Nykthos
that,
Paragon
that's
seems like
great.
this would work in a Layla. Like, that'd be really I
Yeah,
mean,
she has
yeah,
lifelink.
she does have
She's
lifelink.
lifelink. Yeah, just 2 life.
And,
Like, got him.
and Nykthos Paragon is an enchantment, so you would make a fairy off of it.
There you go.
Ooh, intriguing. I like that a lot.
All right, what was the other
All right.
quarter that you had?
So my bonus card is from Dragon's Maze, and it's one of the split cards that confuse, and it's called Beck and Call. So Beck is a sorcery for green
And
and
an
blue.
artist, I believe, right?
He's a loser, but whenever so Beck says whenever a creature enters the battlefield this turn, you may draw a card. And then the other side of that call is 4 colorless and white blue. Put 4 1/1 white bird creature tokens with flying into the battlefield. So in Magic Christmas Land, if I decide to spend 8 on this, I get 4 flyers and draw 4 cards.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, yeah.
are you banking on Magical Christmas Land, or are you cool for the 6 and getting 4 birds? Like, if that's your ceiling, are you good with that?
In a budget deck, yeah, 6 for 4 power in the air is not terrible. Especially if I'm doing Nykthos Paragon type things later. My goal would be to hold off on it and do both, just so I get the additional value of drawing 4 cards. But I mean, in a pinch, you could also do the just cast Beck and then cast another creature because you need to cantrip. So, um, in a budget, I think you back yourself into this corner of like, do I want to do really cool stuff, or do I want to just play the game at the budget I'm at and get some good value? So I think being a split card, you get the modality there, and that's pretty cool.
Cool.
It's a good way of looking at it.
All right, Oob, you're last but definitely not least. You're the budget person at heart. Why don't you tell us how a Layla, a commander with a reputation, is going to survive on a budget with a penny, nickel, dime, and quarter option?
That's a good question. I was having a hard time finding some for a penny. I'm not gonna lie to you. You guys already said some of them. I am a fan of Slith Ascendant in the cards that are like this. There's a whole bunch of them. Slith Ascendant is 1 and white for a creature Slith. It has flying, and when Slith Ascendant deals combat damage to a player, put a +1/+1 counter on it. So it's gonna grow. It, like I said, not the best thing in the world. I'm going to be completely honest with you, but you're almost always going to have somebody you can attack, right? I mean, it's that's flying, and so that's one of the great things about flying tribal is because you're going to have somebody who does not have a flying blocker. And do you know what people don't want to waste removal spells on? Slith Ascendant. And if they do, you laugh, you giggle,
You laugh
you chortle.
at them.
You don't laugh at them because that might make them sad. You just laugh at the what happened, and as you then get to cast a Layla the next turn, and there isn't a removal spell for her, or one less at least, so that's great. So anyways, I like these. It's fine. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I find this hilarious. I've never heard of the Slith creature type, yet they felt compelled, and I don't even remember this card. They reprinted this in Commander Legends.
Yep.
Don't ever remember seeing it. I feel like someone had been like, "Hey, did you know there was a Slith creature type?" And I'd been like, "No, you're a liar." But apparently it does exist.
Well, if you would like to build Slith Tribal, there are 6 of them. But no, I think it's pretty sweet. Like you said, somebody typically does not have a blocker available for flyers, and to just come in and poke or get a taste, as some would say, nobody's going to get super mad about that, and then it's just going to keep growing. And I agree with you. If they end up having to waste the removal because it's grown to like a 5/5, then great, it did its job.
Yep. You did the thing, and it's fun.
Well, and
And
actually,
like,
at that point, Ross, sorry, if they're removing it at 5, that means that you've dealt what 4 set. You've dealt 10 damage. So
Yeah,
10
it's definitely
damage,
done its
3
job.
mana. I'm good with that. I got what Slith Ascendant was supposed to do.
You got the
every
Slith
time
that
you
was coming to you.
right, every time you put a little counter on there, just a little dopamine hit. Boop, like 100%. That's what we play. That's what we play Magic for. So my nickel is one I would not have guessed was as cheap as it is, but it's been reprinted a million times. Warden of Evos Isle.
Sick card.
It's a good one. It's 2 and a blue for a creature bird wizard. It has flying, but creature spells with flying you cast cost 1 less to cast. So anytime that you can make spells cheaper, that is wonderful. It's been reprinted hasn't been reprinted recently, actually. I think the most recent one was original Commander Legends.
Yep.
That it got reprinted in Jumpstart and Mystery Boosters and Eternal Masters. So it's been reprinted enough times. That's only 5 cents. So it isn't a mana rock. Please don't hear me say that. But you can use these kind of effects to sort of mimic a mana rock, and sometimes it can be better, honestly. If you're able to use it twice in a turn, you've effectively made 2 mana. And that's pretty cool.
Yeah, especially in a budget, you can't afford Soul Ring. So if you're able to use it twice in a turn, you got your Soul Ring effectively.
Right.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of these, especially when you're able to pair multiple of them together on the battlefield at the same time. And it's like, cool, the next flying creature spell I cast costs 5 less to cast. And then the ones for the rest of the turn cost 2 less to cast because maybe there was a different effect. Like, I really, really like that stuff because I do feel like in budget, you have to figure out how do you not just go one spell pass. Got to figure out how to at least get 2. If you can do 2 every turn, you're probably leaps and bounds ahead of your opponents.
Yeah, you're doing great.
Yeah, and if you think about just mana curve and the most recent printings for flyers, typically it's the power +1. So in this case, it's a 2/2 for 3 that's flying, which that spell reduction already makes it really good. But then with Alayla on the field, it becomes a 3/2 for 3, which is very economical, especially in a budget.
Definitely, yeah. It just does everything that flying tribals wanting to do. It's an all-star in a flying tribal deck and basically nowhere else, and that's okay. So for my well, I guess I can skip that one. I had if I had to, no, I'm not even gonna do that. Okay, so I have 2 bonus. I have 2 dimes and 2 quarters. I'm gonna do because I love you, the people who listen. So my first dime is Steel Plume Marshal. It is 3 and 2 white for a creature bird soldier. Has flying as a 3/3, and then whenever Steel Plume Marshal attacks, other attacking creatures you control with flying get +2/+2 until end of turn. And you get to. It's very good. Also, you get some pretty great flavor text. The defenders watched in terror as the flying V split apart into a bristling battle formation. I need a Mighty Ducks altar stat. So I think this is it's just a good card. You get to go aggro, and it doesn't affect itself. And 3/3 isn't a huge creature, but just every other attacking creature the flying gets +2/+2. So
Mm-hmm. I mean, this
Yeah.
this leading the flying V of all the fairy tokens that you've been making along the way is going to be scary.
yes,
I mean, this
I
just
want to
kind
make
of
copies
reminds
of it.
me effectively like a budget, less powerful, just echo, like overrun type of effect. And being able to repeat do that, it's not on enter the battlefield. They get +2/+2 till end of turn, just every time it attacks. And I'm going to be honest, I feel like when you're probably attacking with Steel Plume, it's either A, it's someone who can't do anything about it. So, you don't have to worry. But then the other one's like, okay, you can combo block and kill Steel Plume, but you got 7 other 3/3s or 5/5s coming at you. Do you want to take all of that damage, or do you maybe want to spread it out and maybe you don't kill the guy that's doing the +2/+2, but then it's a problem for the next turn? It kind of puts that modal choice in your opponent's hands on how they're going to do the blocking.
Yes, totally agree. So my bonus dime is Inspiring Leader. It is a 2 and a white legendary enchantment background, so it's enchantment which triggers a Layla, and it commander creatures you own have creature tokens you control get +2/+2. Layla makes a bunch of tokens. This makes the tokens bigger. And it's an enchantment that makes a token also if you have a Layla. So pretty straightforward.
Yeah, and that's why community, they didn't allow backgrounds just to be attached to any legendary you wanted. Because if this could be in the command zone with a Layla, that deck would be so strong, so strong.
I mean, at that point, would you do this one or would you do Folk Hero?
I don't know Folk Hero.
That's
Which one's
whenever a creature enters the battlefield that shares creature type,
You draw
you
a
draw a
card,
card.
but you only get that once per
Whew.
turn.
Yeah, if you're going like
It
oh
is
really
once per turn, but it
yeah
turns your engine into also a draw engine.
yeah that's pretty good. Yeah, I mean why not both would be would be what I would say.
Put them all in.
So
Whoops.
I think it's just right.
Actually, I
Exactly.
just looked it up, and I'm gonna have to backtrack. It's when you cast a spell that shares creature type. So
Uh-oh, dun dun dun.
Okay, gotcha. See, I don't know that the backgrounds as well. So yeah, Inspiring Leader, that was my bonus. So
Cool.
first quarter. So like I said, I would probably end up doing more artifacts than enchantments. And so I'm gonna say Sharding Sphinx, which is 4 and a 2 blue. Whenever an artifact creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you may create a 1/1 blue Thopter artifact creature token with flying. It's not non-token artifact creature; it's just artifact creature. So this fuels itself, and it's it's also itself as well. So yeah, anytime you'd have an artifact creature deal combat damage, you get a 1/1. That's an artifact with flying. So I think it's great.
I love
Yeah.
to see a Sharding Sphinx.
Well, and I like the
Just
way
be
that they
very careful
worded
how you
it.
say it.
Being PC here, MarketingRoss. I do like that they worded it so that way if you have 8 artifact creatures connect, you get 8 Thopters. And then the next time, now you hit with 16, you go to 32. I mean, it essentially is exponential as long as they can connect. And like we've talked about, there's going to be someone that you can hit that doesn't have a flyer. So you're always going to get to connect. And yeah, that's how you could build an army real quick.
And so my bonus one kind of goes along with it's sort of best friends with Sharding Sphinx. This is Research Thief. It's 4 and a blue artifact creature Moonfolk Wizard. It was in the Kamigawa Commander decks. It's a flash flying 3/3. But it's whenever an artifact creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. So that's probably the most competitive way I'd say to build a flying deck. I don't think we talked about it much earlier. If you've played enough EDH, you've probably encountered an EDHREC deck, an EDHREC flying man deck, just a bunch of 1/1 flyers that every time they hit somebody, they draw a card. It sucks to play against, just to be frank, at least in my experience it has. This does that, but it's not as busted and is more interesting because it's like, oh hey, you have to have artifact creatures. It also has flash, which is kind of cool. So if you have a bunch of artifact little 1/1s swinging at somebody, if this is out on the field already, they're maybe less likely to block them than if this was out. So it's like they go to blockers, they decide not to go to block, they decide not to block anything, you go to damage, and you're like, haha, flash this in, draw 3 cards. It's great. Like you are gonna feel like a genius.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah, I like it. And I would actually say, guys, because this just got printed in Neon Dynasty Commander, and it's sitting at 23 cents, and it's a brand new card. If you truly are trying to build on a budget, I would pick up 1 or 2 of these because I could see this being a 60, 70-cent card, maybe $1. Because once again, it is whenever an artifact creature you control deals combat damage. So if you have 8 of them, you're drawing 8 cards. And artifacts run rampant in Commander. So if you like this card, I would definitely try to pick one up sooner rather than later because I could only see this card going up in price as long as they don't reprint it into the ground.
Yeah.
All right.
That's all I got.
Well, thank you so much, everyone, for visiting our humble budget shop. And this is Mr. Comment Number 5 saying thanks for stopping by.
And this is MarketingRoss saying stay classy.
It's UltraBudgetBrews, and thanks for coming in. See you next time.
All right. Audio recording done. YouTube, Twitch, thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. And if you didn't watch us live, you'll be able to watch us next week when we post this out on the YouTube. And of course, keep helping out CMDTower. We are going to go ahead and raid a channel because we love helping out our fellow creators. And why not throw some over at Olivia? Because Olivia is just awesome peeps. So we're going to raid over there in just a little bit. But other than that, I hope you guys have a great night. Stay safe and wish me luck on Saturday because I'm getting married. See ya.
Bye.